Omagyanatimirandasya Chnanslaslakya Saksurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigave Namah Chitchetayamanovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupakadamyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shigo Shiyodha Padakamalam Shigum Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Jagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lita Shivshakam Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chatpate Gopesha Gopka Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhani Sitadevi Pranamama Haripriye Vancha Kalpta Visha Kripa Sindhave Visha Padnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachaya Gazatani. Hare Krishna, good morning. I'm presently in New Mayapur in France. We celebrated the 4th of July, the second Tirobhav here of Bhakti Charamaj, where many God brothers and God sisters. So this is a special place, New Mayapur, because Guru Maharaj has saved the place. It was lost not the end of the 80s, but in 92, when he first became GBC here. He collected all what's necessary and did all what's necessary to save the project. Therefore, the residents here are very grateful to Bhakti Charamaj. Otherwise, we won't have this place today. So I'm happy to be with you, and today I will discuss with you what we can say another key verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that is 1.3.44. So I will start with reciting the verse in Sanskrit and the translation and the purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tatra kirtayato viprasherbo ete yasa hamsat yagamam tatra nivishtas tat anugrahat. So ham vashravaishyami yataditam yatamati. Translation. O learned Brahmins, when Sukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there, in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, by his mercy I heard this from that great and powerful sage with rapt attention. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him, and I have realized it. The purport. One can certainly see directly the presence of Lord Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam if one has heard it from a self-realized soul like Sukadev Goswami. One cannot, however, learn Bhagavatam from a bogus hired reciter whose aim of life is to earn some money out of such recitation and employ the earning in sexual indulgence. No one can learn Srimad Bhagavatam who is associated with persons engaged in sex life. That is the secret of learning Bhagavatam. No one can learn Bhagavatam from one who interprets the text by his mundane scholarship. One has to learn Bhagavatam from the representative of Sukadev Goswami and no one else, if one at all wants to see Lord Sri Krishna in the pages. This is the process, and there is no alternative. Sutta Goswami is a bona fide representative of Sukadev Goswami, because he wants to present the message which he has received from the learned Brahman, Sukadev Goswami, as also presented Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father. And also Sutta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he heard it from Sukadev Goswami. Simply hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word nivishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind, and no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one is pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one assuredly see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Thus ends Bhaktivedanta Purpose of the first canto, third chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. We read once again the verse. Tatra kirtayato viparsher bhuite asa Ramsa tyaganam tatra nivishtastat anugrahat soam va shravayishyami yataditam yatamati. O learned Brahmins, when Sukadev Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Pariksit, by his mercy I heard this from the great and powerful sage with rapt attention. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I've realized it. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvashesha Srinyavadi Paskachani Desatani. So this chapter is called Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So in the beginning, there we had the sages of Namisaranya asking Sutta Goswami 6 questions. And one of these questions was, please describe all the incarnations of the Lord. But then the last question was, we are now entering into Kali Yuga. Krishna has left us, has left the planet. To whom should we now take shelter? So Sutta Goswami, after giving a summary of the main incarnations, at the end he says, this Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And that it was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, who was also an incarnation of the Lord. That it was meant for the ultimate good of all people. So that's the last incarnation he mentioned, but then he says, yes, that he answers this last question: where should one take shelter in Kali Yuga? And Sutta Goswami says, Krishna Svadama Parvati Dharma Jnanadibhi Saha Kalu Nastati Sami Sapurnah Kridunodita. So Krishna Svadama Parvati. Krishna is gone to his own abode. And with him went Dharma Jnanadibhi Saha. Dharma went with him. And Dharma is described here as religion, knowledge, etc. Kalanastadrisham is that people in Kali Yuga who have lost their vision were utterly confused. That due to the dense dark of ignorance, Purnakadonodita, they can get light from this Purana. But how to get the light of Srimad Bhagavatam? That's explained in this last verse. And the purpose Srila Prabhupada says, yes, Krishna is present in the Bhagavatam. Krishna is present in the pages of the Bhagavatam. But one must learn how to extract Krishna from the pages of the Bhagavatam. And that methodology has been given here by Sukadev Goswami. And first, one must hear from the right person. That's the first thing. And the second is one should hear with right attention. So what's the right person? Sukadev Goswami said, when Sukadev Goswami recited the Bhagavatam, I was also there. He was one of the sages sitting there. And he was hearing the Bhagavatam. So he heard it from the right person in the Guru Parampara. Because Sukadev Goswami heard it from his father, Srila Vyasadeva, who got it from Krishna. That he is the literal incarnation of God. So he heard it and he said, I heard this with rapt attention. So one must hear with rapt attention and then he says, I will present you this very same thing as I've heard from him, without any change, the very same thing. So we are hearing from the right person, Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, because Sutta Goswami heard it with rapt attention from Sukadev Goswami, who got it from Srila Vyasadeva. And he says, Sutta Goswami says, I will try to present it in the same way, without any change. He presents it without any change as he has heard it. So that's the right person. But there are qualities of the speaker, and the qualities to receive. To receive, one must hear with rapt attention. And that's a problem. That mostly when you hear the verse or you read the verse and then you close the book and then you try to remember what you heard, may be a problem. Kali Yuga is so difficult to hear. But you can remember when you can hear with rapt attention. So one who can hear everything One who can hear everything what is said and remember it, because one has heard with rapt attention, is called a Shrutidar. But to hear with rapt attention, one must be in goodness. Goodness means one must be able to fix one's consciousness in the present without any deviation. That's in Bhagavad Gita, that's called Brahma Bhuta. The beginning of the spiritual platform is just be in the present. Because you can only be in the present when Nashoshati Nakamshati, when you don't lament or don't hanker for anything in this world. So that's a problem. That just to be in the present, therefore Srila Prabhupada makes his point in the purport, yes, no one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. So it depends on purity in mind. What does it mean? Srila Prabhupada says, no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. That's the first thing. We must be pure in action, and then that will help to cleanse our mind. So no one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in the pages of the Bhagavatam. When Srila Prabhupada, when it was one time that when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was going to give initiations, and the name of Abhay Charan came up, and the name Abhay Charan was proposed, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj immediately said, yes, he likes to hear. And because he likes to, and that is his quality. He likes to hear, and therefore I will give him initiation. That was that was the quality that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj in Srila Prabhupada saw. And Srila Prabhupada repeated that later. Later I said many times, yes, I've one good quality. He said, of course, Srila Prabhupada had many good qualities, but he said, I have one good quality that I try to hear with attention. So, because, of course, Srila Prabhupada says, because we may say I'm not pure in mind, so that's my hope. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said about Srila Prabhupada, he likes to hear. He has a desire to hear. So that desire is very important. We must desire to go back to Godhead. We must desire, therefore, to get an answer on all our questions on how to make spiritual advancement. And if you have that desire, you are eager to know and eager to hear. So that is the beginning of spiritual life, really. It starts with this hearing, but hearing with attention is not easy. But in Satya Yuga, everyone practically was Shrutidar because they were in the mode of goodness. And they could straight on meditate, fix their mind. So they were all Shrutidar. But even in Kali Yuga, if we develop Brahminical qualities, our memory will improve and our capability to hear with attention. During the British Raj in India, there was, at one time, there was a fight between two Englishmen, and it came to a fight. And then later they came before the court. And there was one witness of the fight, and that was a Brahmin. And the judge asked the Brahmin, "You have witnessed, what can you tell us?" And the man said in Hindi or Bengali, I don't know, but he said, "I didn't understand anything what they say because I don't understand English." And then the judge said, "Oh yeah, but then what's the use of your witness?" And the man said, "But I remember what they said." And he started to say, "This person said that." And then the other replied that. And then this person said that. And then there was another reply that. So he remembered all the syllables, and he was reconstructing the whole conversation without understanding one word. So that is Shruti Das. Once hearing, remembering. Therefore, in previous ages, the Vedas were not written down. They were given from or transferred verbally, orally, that because everyone remembered that, but then the memory went down. And there was Srila Vyasadeva, as Dvapara Yuga came down. He divided all the Vedas in small sections and gave it to different disciples. That at least it would be preserved like that. And many of these sages were there hearing from Sukadev Goswami. And when all these sages arrived, then we know Maharaj Pariksit was thinking, why are they coming? I'm a worldly king. Normally sages, they are not associating with kings. It must be because I'm a descendant of the great Pandavas. But then all these sages came, and he asked all these sages one by one. Well, he asked them, what's the duty of a man about to die? But they gave all different answers because they were seeing the Vedas to the part they had memorized. So that's why the Vedas were divided by Srila Vyasadeva. And that's, of course, problematic, especially in Kali Yuga. No one remembers anything. Prayanal Payusa Sabya Kalavas Minchirechana Manda Samanda Mateo Manda Bahi Upatuta. People are short sighted, lazy, always disturbed, and so on. That they cannot remember anything because they are mostly in passion and ignorance. Therefore, a devotee's lifestyle is in the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, you become peaceful and you can remember. But one must follow the 4 regulative principles, because if one does not follow them strictly, it will be difficult to give attention. The power comes from from being in goodness and avoid passion and ignorance and certainly sinful activities. And that's also that power to concentrate the mind. How can we concentrate the mind and hear with attention? that there is a verse here. There's a verse in the 6th canto, 6:113, describes how to concentrate the mind. Because the translation starts with, to concentrate the mind, one must. So that's important for us to learn that. I know Bhakti Charamaj, he gave the instruction to all the disciples every day before the day before the Bhagavatam class, you read a verse of the next day and you memorize it. So that you have memorized it before you come to the class. Unfortunately, nobody of us can do it. It's if we must have done it every day, we would now have quite a memory that was his desire, that we do that. Memorize the verse every day before the class. So that's this verse that explains how to concentrate the mind. Tapassa brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha tahena satcha sabhyam yamena niyamena va. To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. Celibacy means following the four regulative principles. So celibacy, even in family life, one must be celibate. Sexual contact only for procreation of for children. So that's important. Also, Shayasta is an ashram, and one must observe a life of celibacy also in that ashram. So sexual contact only for procreation of children. Observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. It's very difficult for many people in this age, because the modern society does not cooperate with that. There's so many allurements in advertisements and so on. It becomes very dangerous. Therefore, we should refrain from looking at all these mundane things. And then one must undergo the austerity of voluntary giving up sense enjoyment. That's another very heavy thing, giving up sense enjoyment. Of course, our enjoyment is honoring prasad. If honoring prasad is done just to keep body and mind together, body and soul together, then it is fine. That just what the body needs. But not eating out of sense enjoyment. If we take prasad, honor prasad, it's a meditation on the Lord. How the Lord, we meditate how the Lord tasted this prasadam. We taste very nice. And then one must then control mind and senses. Mind and senses give charity, be truthful, clean, and non-violent. These are a lot of points, but they have all their importance. Control the mind and senses. How do you control the mind and senses? It says control. So you must not identify with the mind. Most people identify with the mind. There are even philosophers who say, I think I'm the mind. But no, we are not. Yoga means controlling the mind and not identifying with the mind. It means we use our intelligence to control the mind. And at the end of the third chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains we should feed our intelligence with transcendental knowledge. That's how to act as a spirit soul. And then with that intelligence, the soul with faith instruct the intelligence to engage the mind and senses in devotional service without interruption. That's the only way to control the mind. Always engage the mind and sense in the service of Krishna without material desire, just to please Krishna. But helpful also is give charity. Householders should give charity. That if you give away, then it helps with the renunciation. That to be charitable. That voluntarily give up possession and give it to others. That helps to be cured of our selfishness. And then be truthful. Truthful is an austerity of the mind. Because mostly when we are not truthful, when we lie, then it's because we are afraid of losing a material benefit. We are afraid of being dishonored. We are afraid not to get a job or whatever. But truthful. Then clean is very important. Cleanliness externally by taking a bath, but internally cleaning the mind by chanting Hare Krishna. And then being non-violent. That so we even don't harm an ant. And follow the regulative principles. 4 regulative principles important, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. There are a lot of instructions, but if you know how to follow them, your mind will be always controlled. So concentrate the mind, observe a life of celibacy, that give up sense enjoyment, control the mind by engagement in devotional service, be charitable, truthful, clean and non-violent. Follow the regulative principle and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. So these are the instructions of Sukadev Goswami to Maharaj Pariksit. How to concentrate the mind. But austerities of the mind are also explained in chapter 17, that there in text 16, that there it's austerities of the mind are explained. And by performing these austerities, we will help to control the mind. And the first is mana prasada, that satisfaction of the mind. So that is a very important instruction, to get hold of the mind and to control it. If the mind is satisfied, it will be easy to control. To get a satisfied mind. And if we hear the Bhagavatam regularly, we will get a lot of instructions that if we remember the instructions, then like Tashaiveta Pavitrita Kovto Dalapyati Pramatam Yaparata Dalapyati Dukavan Anyatus Kamka Kalini Savata Gabia Ramasa. This verse says one should search for the happiness which is not available from the lowest till the highest planet in this universe. So one should, and what happiness in this world is concerned, one should not seek for happiness in this world, because it will come on its own accord, like distress comes in its own accord. We don't want distress, but it comes. So when we take birth, we have a certain happiness and distress in this life, which is predestined. We cannot change it. That's the happiness you have constructed yourself in your past life. And Krishna gives it to you. So how do we deal with that in our daily lives? And we should deal with that in a way that the mind feels satisfied. And that's explained in the 10th canto. Tattena kampamsi sumekshama bujatmai vatmakita vipakam ritvakva budir vidadana stage video muktabade sadayabak. The devotee thinks, yes, I'm suffering, and that's good, because I've been the cause in my previous life of other suffering, and now I get the reaction. And I deserve it, Krishna. It's good for me to suffer, because I deserve it. And you give me only a token of the suffering, not the whole thing, because I tried to become your devotee. You are so merciful. So that's feeling satisfied with the happiness and distress you get. That's right. So that's also the instruction I remember always of Bhakti Sharma, which he gave us. Whatever happens in your life, good or bad, see it as the mercy of Krishna. And then you will get mana prasada. Then most of your suffering goes just by accepting that. If you start to fight against that and you try to change your situation, and that with all force, then you are going again, making reactions. That it is a very important point. Mana prasada, attaining the satisfaction of the mind. And then it says simplicity. That make your life simple. Simple means what you need. But everything beyond what you need to perform nicely devotional service, it's a burden. Keep your life simple. If you need a car for your work, you need a car. But if you don't need it, better. That's just what you need. To live a nice life in devotional service, simple life for high thinking. I see here in New Mayapur, devotees are now harvesting. Kalakanta Prabhu from Brazil was here, the cow minister, and they were all in the fields, and the cows were cutting the grains for harvesting. Everyone was happy. A very simple life. That is what Prabhupada wanted us. Simple life and high thinking. The more you have, the more problematic. And then gravity. Gravity is Srila Prabhupada explains that, yes, gravity means, one should always strive for sense gratification, always serious. One should always strive for self-realization, always serious in making spiritual advancement, that there's no time to play in this world for sense gratification, that gravity, that does not mean that one cannot make jokes or whatever, but one should remain. The Srila Prabhupada had a lot of humor, but it was always based on the gravity of Krishna consciousness, making spiritual advancement. And then self-control, dhammas. Self-control, yes, that's a Brahminical quality which we need to develop to be able to keep this mind satisfied and controlled. So these are the Brahminical qualities. Samudamastapachacham shantiyaryavam shakyana vijnanam astakyam brahma karma svabhavasam. Peacefulness. So if one is peaceful, one can meditate. Self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, religiousness. These are the qualities of the Brahmins. But we have Sudam Vipra. Sudam Vipra, he was a bit averse of sense gratification. Of course, later he understood. I've also to give up this aversion, because he was thinking, sense gratification keeps me away from Krishna, so I don't want it. I want to be pure. But later he understood, when he went to Dwarka and saw Krishna, and then Krishna gave him all the opulence when he came back. He understood Krishna wants me to enjoy it. Sudam Vipra got this palace and all this enjoyment, but he was living as simple as before, but not attached to it. So that is a good quality, that restricts sense gratification, that aversion may be there in the beginning, but that cannot remain. That's also not good. So self-control and purification of one's existence. That's important. That's one of the godly qualities mentioned in the beginning of the 16th chapter. Abhaya Sattva Samsudhir. Fearless and strive for purification of one's existence. And therefore, that is very important for all of us. How do we strive for this purification of existence? Tad buddhas, tad atmas, tad nishtat, tad parayana, kacantapana ravritam, jnana kalmasa. If one uses one's body, mind, words in the service of Krishna, then one becomes purified. So this is some advice how to concentrate the mind. We know also when we chant holy name that we know the 10 offenses. So at the end we say it's also an offense being attentive while chanting. And so that is very important. If we chant, we must endeavor to concentrate. But the concentration will be more easy if we try to chant with love. That's important. Of course, Krishna says to Arjuna, Yaturita Nishalati. Yeah, when the mind wanders, you have to bring it back. But if you chant with love, you put all your affection, the chance that your mind will wander is less. So we must endeavor when we chant. Sometimes we think of Krishna, sometimes we don't think of Krishna when we chant. Sometimes we concentrate on the holy name, sometimes mind is somewhere else. But the point is to bring it always back that and make an endeavor to make the periods that we think of Krishna longer and the periods that we forget shorter. And then we should come at a certain time to make it constant. So that about concentration of the mind. So we must hear from the right person who has done the same thing, who has endeavored the same thing, to hear with attention and concentrate the mind. And yes, this is the most important quality to start making spiritual advancement. That this quality of hearing with attention, giving one-pointed attention, Vyavsyatmika buddhi ekana konandana, giving one-point attention. That because Bhogasvara Pashaktanam Tayaprita Shetanam. If the mind is attached to sense enjoyment, it becomes disturbed. And that's the point. That's because the Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna. And it is Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is in the pages of the Bhagavatam. And how to extract it? We extract it by hearing with attention from the right person. It's very important to hear Bhagavatam daily with great attention. So that is what I could say on this verse. Are there any comments or questions, please?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, thank you for the class. Thank you so much for the class. I have a few questions, but my most prominent one is in the last class, in the last 3 classes I think you've given us, you've mentioned this instruction from Guru Maharaj that if any bad things happen in our life or any good things happen in our life, we should take it as the mercy of Krishna. One question that arose is if we also, like, even we know that devotees have fallen down from the movement or left ISKCON, and that's a bad thing, or left spiritual life in general. That's a bad thing. And should we also consider something like that as a mercy of Krishna?
That, well, of course, there is that we cannot see the plan of Krishna, that we cannot understand the plan of Krishna, that there is that story with this king and his minister was a Vaishnava, that and one day the king went hunting, that he was hunting in the forest, and while he did some wrong movement with his bow, and he got injured, and he lost a part of his finger. So then when he came back in the palace, the Vaishnava minister, the first minister, said, yes, everything is the mercy of Krishna. And the king became angry. He said, how can you say that this is the mercy of Krishna? And the king became angry. And he threw this minister in jail. And then sometime later, the king went again hunting. And he was captured by dacoits. And they were worshippers of Durga, but they were worshippers in a mode of ignorance. They were offering human offers to Durga. So, and the so-called priest came, and he was going to prepare the king to be offered to Durga. And they were bathing him and perfuming him. And then they were going in to offer him. And then the priest came and he looked at the king and at his body and he said, oh, he's missing a part of his finger. This is not complete. We cannot offer him. Throw him out. And they threw him out. And somewhere or another he went back to the palace. And then he remembered the words of his minister, that this is the mercy of Krishna. That and he called his minister. He released him from jail and told him, yes, you are right. It was the mercy of Krishna. Now I'm still alive. But the king said, when I threw you in jail, then you said, yes, it's also the mercy of Krishna. How is that the mercy of Krishna that I put you in jail? And the minister replied, he said, yes, if you did not put me in jail, I would have gone with you hunting. And my body is complete. They would have offered me instead of you. So therefore it's Krishna's mercy. So the point is, Rasaraj Krishna Prabhu, we don't see the big picture. Sometimes devotees, they give up temporarily devotional service because of offenses. And they have to go through it. But Krishna does not like offenses, of offensive mentality. And that happens many times. But you can assure one thing is, from the moment you start chanting Hare Krishna and taking up devotional service, your material life is finished. You will come back at a certain time. Why? Because you can never enjoy like any other persons anymore. It's not possible. That we got in the 70s, and somewhere in America there was a devotee who joined, and he was distributing books and was doing good for some time. But at a certain moment, it happened that what they call he blubbed. He left the movement and went to his previous habits. And 2 years later, the devotees went to see him and asked him, how are you doing? You know what he said? I really try my best to forget Krishna, but every day he comes into my mind. So once you have taken up Krishna consciousness, your material life is finished. It may be temporary, covered. But of course, that does not mean if we see that the devotee is drifting away and so on, we should do our best to get him back into the fold. Certainly. And that's a point to work on. I know the Kurmats, Bhakti was a very important point for him. If someone would drift away, he would do his best to get him back. Whatever he would make special efforts. So we should try our best there. But always know Krishna is in control. That once in contact with Krishna consciousness, one is never lost. And that these are not just my words. These are Prabhupada's words. And he says that in 240, in the purport of Bhagavad Gita, 240 is the verse where Krishna says, in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the greatest type of fear. So, and in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, yes, if one that starts in devotional service, so 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results. So the next beginning is from the point of 2%, whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. So that's the scriptural proof here of what I'm saying. That does that help us, Raj? Krishna?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for a nice class, Maharaj. I have two questions. One, Maharaj, every day we try to read Srimad Bhagavatam and discuss. But Maharaj, if you want to recommend, if I want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam on regular basis to systematically study verse by verse or page by page, so what you would suggest, hearing?
Yeah, I would say, like you said, we should study it systematically from the first verse. But it's good, I think, if that it depends. You give Bhagavatam class, and we stick to what Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport. The speaker on the verse would best hear Prabhupada's lectures on this verse, that before he gives the class, and note down the main points, and maybe also other senior ISKCON devotees who discuss the verse. And then you get Prabhupada's realizations of the verse and these of senior devotees, and the speaker shares that. And then you discuss, but then the question should be, what is there in this verse that for me practically to apply in my situation? It must become practical. That there must be contemplation in your own heart, but strong in my heart. That how can this verse and this instruction help me? That and really adapt your lifestyle to it. So, because Krishna consciousness is a life, a style of living. That's explained in the Bhagavatam. How to live in this world as a spirit soul, that in Krishna consciousness. And that is important systematically from the first verse onwards, not jumping. I give some topical classes, but like you've seen, I'm mostly going to the first canto. But better is if you start from the first verse and go straight. The first verse, yeah. Sanmadhyasyatam vyataratis satis abhihyasvat. This verse has a long purport, and it had 8 divisions. So you should, in the purports, so you should give at least 8 classes on the first verse before going to the next. Then you have the basis. So it's important to go systematically from the first verse onwards, verse after verse after verse. And that's how the Bhagavatam is building up and preparing us, because the first canto is a preparation for the beginning of the second canto. The Bhagavatam begins the beginning of the second canto. But Srila Prabhupada has put already everything practically in the first canto. So it's important to discuss that very deeply, the first canto, before going to the next, and then the second canto, and continue. That and does that help?
Yes, yes, Maharaj. If you allow, so Maharaj, if practically, if I wanted to do first canto, yeah, there are some lectures by Srila Prabhupada as well as Guru Maharaj, which I can hear their comments. But if I wanted to go verse by verse, would you recommend any other Maharajas or senior devotees who have systematically recorded the lectures, which we can go, verse by verse for Canto 1?
Yeah, mostly what I'm doing, I'm going to srimadbhagavatamclass.com, and there you find all the classes. So I'm first hearing the class of Prabhupada, and then I'm going more or less in seniority. The most senior first, and then I'm going down. But I do not want to put forward names. But if you have that principle of seniority, you apply that. That's good. Yeah, on some verses there are many lectures, but you can hear the main lectures. Because I started to write, and I have to my computer a study guide for the first canto. In that study guide, you find the main points for each verse, or each section. You find the first the points Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport, and then the points that Srila Prabhupada makes in the lecture, in his lectures. And then some of the points that other senior discount devotees has made on this verse. That's how I made my study guide. It's still not edited, but if you want it, I can try to find it and send it to you.
Yes, Maharaj. If it is okay with you, please send.
Okay.
I'll send my email address, Maharaj.
I will do that.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. And one more question, Maharaj. Today's class, I understood mode of goodness is very important while hearing as well as practicing Krishna consciousness. But many times, projects like D-Land, if you want to do things and a lot of things, then we may have to take help of mode of passion. How to make sure that mode of passion doesn't overcome or overtake mode of goodness, and we miss, like how we can avoid missing the main point why we are serving him.
Yeah, and there are many practical points, because I traveled many years 3 months a year during 15 years with Prahadananda Swami. And I learned from him the mode of goodness. We may be very busy during the day, but before lunch, you take a shower, always. We would not take lunch without taking a shower before. And it changes. You get a break, you take a shower, you feel peaceful. Then you can take prasad in a meditative mode. So there are so many practical things that study the mode of goodness, live in the mode of goodness, go early to bed and get up early in the morning, that get a scheduled, regulated life. Try to find a regulation in a very busy schedule. It may be a challenge, but best to make it a priority, because then you will be able to go on for a long time. Otherwise, at a certain time, you may come to the point, I need a break here. But if you're in the mode of goodness, then it's going better. Anyway, you have to see practically what's good for your situation. Good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you.
So, Maharaj, I couldn't hear whom you were traveling, Maharaj. I couldn't hear that.
Prahadananda Swami.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. I wish you all the best, and if Krishna willing, next week we meet again. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.